Hello, this video is an introduction to evaluating functions. I want to go over one of the level 1 problems, one of the level 2 problems, and then also how to compare function values. So here is our first question. G of x equals negative 3x minus 4, and it's asking for us to evaluate g of negative 4. Now, a few quick reminders. G is simply the name of the function that does not do anything. Whatever is inside of the function, that is our input, and then our rule for evaluating this function is given by this. So if we're asked to find g of negative 4, we are simply inputting negative 4 into this function. So I'm going to go ahead and change colors here. So g of negative 4, well, this would be negative 3 times negative 4 minus 5. Order of operations here tells us that our multiplication is going to come first. Well, I have negative 3 times negative 4, that is positive 12. And then 12 minus 5, that is equal to 7. So our first answer is 7 on this one. Now, this is kind of our basic level function. I believe all of the ones in this activity are linear. However, I do want to talk about evaluating some more difficult functions. So level 2 is going to ask us to, yeah, there we go. Level 2 is where we're going to start to see some quadratic functions. And we have to be very, very careful with order of operations. So if we're asked to find f of negative 3, we are inputting negative 3 into this function. Now, let's talk about order of operations here. My function tells me, hey, we have the opposite of, my input is negative 3. So negative 3 is going to be my input, and then squared, and then finally minus 12. Now, be careful here. A lot of people really kind of struggle with this part here. Order of operations, this negative is really just a -1, that is multiplication, whereas this is an exponent. Exponent is going to take precedence here. So we're going to leave this negative alone. And then finally, negative 3 squared, negative 3 times itself is 9. So we have negative 9 here. And then finally, we still have our minus 12. And if I do this, negative 9 minus 12, that is going to give me negative 21. All right, so please, please, please be careful. And in fact, if you were to do that in a calculator, just be careful with parentheses here. You need negative 3 squared. And then finally, what was it? It was minus 12, minus 12. And sure enough, you have 21. If you were to just type in negative, well, I'm kind of curious now, negative 3 squared minus 12, yeah, you're going to get a different value. So be careful with parentheses and order of operations in your calculator. All right, and then finally, last problem here. This one here, comparing function values. It is going to give us two functions and then ask us to compare those two. So we have f of x is a 4x to the 5th. G of x is 7 times 4 to the x. And we are asked to compare those two. This is a good time to use your calculator. So let me go ahead and move this over. All right, our first one is 4x to the 5th, and we're trying to compare this at 2. So 4 times 2 to the 5th power, and that is 128. So I know that this value is 128. And then finally, 7 times 4 to the 2nd power. That is 112. So I have 128, 128, and this one ended up being 112. So to compare those, at 2, this function has a greater value than that. So f of 2 is greater than g of 2 at that moment in time. And there you go. So you should have plenty of information to do these first three, evaluating functions, levels 1 and 2, and then finally comparing function values.